The subject is writing. I use the word to denote all kinds of inscription, whether forming words, images, buildings, or landscapes. There are all kinds of writing. My focus will be on text formed of letters, characters, syllabaries, and other signs which appear in public places, performing to a public audience, continuously drawing a reader's attention to some official or unofficial information, or some social, commercial, or political position. Text, once written, performs on its own. It engenders reaction, positive, negative, or even passive. The space occupied by a text forms part of the text and is absorbed in the performance. Context is key, spatiality matters. It is the weaving together of all the surrounding circumstances, thereby revealing not only what is intended to be revealed, but also any number of borderline features. Whether the performance is effective or not, it will usually reveal the social identity of both the writer and the reader. Performance requires an audience, and the reveal is dependent on perception, on the reader's response. Wolfgang Iser, German literary critic, in his work The Act of Reading, deals with reader response theory. He proposes that the text itself suggests the existence of an implied reader, who may or may not fit the profile of the actual reader. The reader who is familiar with the strategies and scope of the text might have greater understanding, but it is unlikely that there will be a perfect match between the text's codes and the reader's codes, and so responses will vary. The power of the text, then, is dependent on the readers affected by it. In his work, Le Plaisir du Texte, Roland Barthes writes, "The text is a tissue of quotations drawn from innumerable centers of culture. The reader is the space on which all the quotations that make up a writing are inscribed, without any of them being lost. A text's unity lies not in its origin, but in its destination. Yet this destination cannot any longer be personal. The reader is without history, biography, psychology. The reader is simply that someone who holds together in a single field all the traces by which the written text is constituted." Georges Dumézil, in The Destiny of a King, put it another way. It is the reader's task to perceive the providential design which has arranged the events in the order in which the work presents them, and with the results which it describes. Yet it is the design that justifies these events and results and gives them meaning. Meaning happens through reading. Literary theorist Roman Ingarden adds, "The text is nothing more than a series of schemata, which the reader then interprets and shapes into meaningful language. The reader brings pre-understandings, a set of contexts and beliefs and expectations to the work." The idea behind reader response theory is that there are three interconnecting spheres: the world of the writer, the world of the text, and the world of the reader. The writer, having created the text from her world, is then separated from it. It stands alone. On viewing the text, the reader has only the text, which may or may not affect the world of the reader, but will have become part of it for however long the encounter takes place. What the reader makes of or takes from the encounter is dependent on the reader's world of experience, which can include the world of the writer. The space of the urban street or country road is a space in which we encounter words and pictures in voluminous quantities. Advertisements, instructions, political messages, newspapers, official and unofficial posters, monumental murals, messages, and various forms of graffiti. It is part of an overall communication and information system. In their book, Signs, Lettering in the Environment, Phil Baines and Catherine Dixon have provided an encyclopedic reference of signs intended to direct and instruct, as well as signs of identity through the naming of places and defining of spaces. The signs intended to direct and instruct, warn and prohibit, are elements of the only international language understood in almost every part of the globe. It is the result of nearly 50 years of international meetings, in spite of, or perhaps because of, a devastating depression and catastrophic world war. So much time and energy in an attempt to establish order and organization on the roads and streets connecting nations, a systematic conduit between different social groupings. This system of logistics extends to vessel traffic services and air traffic control. In effect, the international community would appear to be united when it comes to signage relating to order. This study is to explore the use of public text as a means of social and political control, as well as social unrest and protest. In an essay entitled Night Discourse, Producing Consuming Meaning on the Street, Professor Tim Creswell states, "The street is a realm in which a number of different kinds of writing, of inscription, take place. The street has played a central role in the history of modernism, but a role which is far from straightforward. There is tension between the street as a site and sign of domination and order, and as a site and sign of unrest, rebellion, and disorder." Creswell refers to American designer, landscape architect, performance and installation artist Vito Acconci, who writes in an article in the journal Critical Inquiry entitled Public Space in Private Time, "The built environment is built because it's allowed to be built. It's been allowed to be built because it stands for and reflects an institution or a dominant culture. The budget for architecture is 100 times the budget for public art, because a building provides jobs and products and services that augment the finances of the city. Public art comes in through the back door, like a second-class citizen. Instead of bemoaning this, public art can use the marginal position to its advantage. Public art can present itself as the voice of the marginal cultures, as the minority report, as the opposition party. Public art exists to thicken the plot. Every written sign in a public space is a public text. It is writing to a public audience, continuously reminding the reader of some official or unofficial information, or some social or political position. These public signs are significant public art. I seek to explore the art of public text. Does this writing signify as social and political? Does the majority or ruling group support their political and territorial interests through the use of public writing? Does this public text perform as a display of the social identity of a given group? In his various works, Erving Goffman has considered the question of identity in its many forms. There are a number of levels of identity as shown here. All human activity is surrounded by writing. In a lecture on Writing as a Social Practice, Professor Raz Ivanik states that writing, as a social practice, can be understood as several layers embedded in each other. Writing is multimodal text. Writing is a cognitive and creative process. Writing is a physical and material process. Writing is situated, purposeful social interaction. And writing is culturally, politically, and historically located. The pervasiveness of textual and pictorial displays throughout history has markedly increased. Changes in information digital technology have produced an incredible array of signs and methods of creating signs. The signifiers that surround us purvey more than directions in consumer goods. They also deal in politics, politicians, religions, and social causes. Is it the case that the prolific distribution of signs texts has increased the effectiveness of their performance in inciting changing attitudes and behavior? Has the development of the means of displaying and disseminating text and identifying signs dramatically and grammatically changed the way signs are perceived? Is it the case that sign as a means of revealing identity has become progressively a means of constructing identity?